Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Greg Dugard, and I'm the Associate Vice President of the University of Relations here at Notre Dame. I'll be standing in today for Lou Nani, our normal talk show host. Lou's feeling a little bit under the weather today, so let me start out by stating that I understand this is a little bit like going to a Broadway show and being disappointed when you get the understudy, but I'll do my best to live up to the high standards he has set over the last year. It's been amazing that this has almost been a year that we've had these live chats with Lou. And today we are featuring a two-time guest on the show. And I can recall back in April of 2020 when we had Erin Hoffmann Harding on, when we were thinking about very different things than we are today. All related, of course, to the health, well-being, and safety of our students and how to provide a safe environment for them. Back then, it was for them going home. And today it's for how we have as normal of experience as possible on campus. You heard last year from Erin, and she's one of our amazing leaders on campus. As the Vice President of Student Affairs, she oversees 5 different divisions: health and wellness, residential life, student development, career and professional development, and campus ministry. And if you think about everything that's happened in the pandemic, each of those areas have been impacted pretty dramatically. And she has a long history at the university, of course, having previously served as our Associate Vice President for Strategic Planning and Special Projects for the Office of Strategic Planning and Institutional Research. She came to us, before returning to her alma mater, she came to us from McKinsey & Company, international consulting firm. She was in the offices of Chicago and Cleveland. And as a graduate of Notre Dame, as I mentioned, in Mendoza College of Business, summa cum laude, and also a Harvard Business Law grad, where she graduated magna cum laude. She and her husband, Ryan, are the proud parents of 3 beautiful, smart, and active boys, 10 and younger. And I'm told by Erin that they are now avid ice skaters, having embraced the cold weather here in Notre Dame and out on the ice and skates a lot. So they're spending some pandemic time doing that and burning off a little bit of energy. But Erin and her husband have very busy lives professionally. And what's always amazed me about Erin is that she also gives back to the community, both active in parish, active at kids' schools, active in community and civic leadership. She's an amazing just member of this community, and we're proud to be friends of hers and love working with her as well. We got a lot to cover today, so we'll launch right in and start firing some questions. So Erin, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Greg, it's great to spend time with you, and thanks for the kind introduction. I think I'm benefiting, actually. We both miss Lou and are thinking of him, but I'll take that kind of introduction any day. That was way too generous. Thank you.
Well, Lou led off last week talking about he got a new haircut or something. So, the producers of the show, which are many, decided maybe we give Lou a break this week and give him some time off. No, he wishes he was here to spend time with you. I know that he always enjoys these conversations, and particularly with you. I mentioned in the intro, Erin, that a lot has changed in the last year, of course. And last year in April, when you were kind enough to join us on this chat, we were talking about safety. And how do you get the kids home? How do you get them food? How do you make sure that they have internet and laptops and connections and so forth? When you think about then to now, where's your mindset? What's changed? And what's the biggest difference kind of in your responsibility between then and now?
Greg, it's funny that you led with the health and safety of our students. I think it's just directionally different. That is on what's on my mind right now. I actually today, there'll be a letter going out from several of us in the campus community thinking about cases on campus. And we're seeing an increase in numbers here at the start of the semester, and we're really asking for the help of the campus community and our students to put these protocols in place that we've all been living with. It is hard to believe, nearly for a year now. But if I look back at, it's shocking to me that I was here in April and talking with Lou at that time. We were worried about our students at home, and we are so grateful to have them here with us. So while safety and health and well-being, I think, are still my overriding concerns, I'm so grateful that we have our students here with us so they're able to learn in person.
So we've got them back, right? And we're just about, they've been here for over a week, the students. And certainly, from my perspective, and as you just mentioned, it's great to have them back, right? And had we not all known what was going on in the world, we would think it's kind of normal since we've had snow every single day since they've been back, and sub 20-degree weather for many of those days. But we got through the pre-matriculation testing, and we came out okay. But we expect when the first dashboard comes out that things are going to be a little bit worse off in terms of positives.
We do. So you're absolutely right. The pre-matriculation testing, students were amazingly compliant, as were our faculty and staff. But this virus is relentless. And I think what we have to remind our community is we are doing much more asymptomatic testing. Actually, all of our undergraduate students, our professional students, are testing weekly this year, and our graduate students and our faculty and staff who are working on campus test every other week. But it goes back to those basic protocols about being vigilant, about mask wearing, distancing, as hard as it is for a community like ours, but just to be very careful, because even one small trip in a car to a grocery store or to a store here where a student isn't wearing a mask, we've seen and heard can result in transmission. And so that's the reminder we're going to offer the campus community.
And in addition to the students that you mentioned and faculty, we received some questions in advance of today's conversation, and there were a couple of questions that related to faculty and staff as well. And I can state to you that those of us that come to campus on a relatively frequent basis are required to have the same type of adaptive testing, I think it's called, and surveillance testing. And we're, of course, subject to the same COVID protocols that all of the students are. And we speaking on behalf of my colleagues, at least in development, we spend a lot of time talking about how we keep the campus environment safe. And so it's on everybody's mind. I know that for sure. How about other institutions? You've done a great job, I think, in your 9+ years here of really collaborating with other peer institutions and trying to learn from them and sharing, best practices with them when appropriate. What type of limits have they placed on their students in terms of gathering, and what did you learn from the process of talking to other places?
Yeah, the topic of gathering together has been a really challenging one for a community like ours that really flourishes when we are together physically as well as emotionally in so many ways, Greg. But you're right. Students asked us actually in August, they said, tell us how many is safe. And so what we did last summer and then have continued to do very regularly is look at a set of highly selective institutions that also have most of their students back on campus. And so what we've asked of our student community is actually to gather in groups of 10 or less informally, still using those health and safety protocols. But actually Notre Dame, I would say in terms of where we fall on a spectrum, that would be similar to some institutions, but actually there's many that have curtailed gatherings altogether or even have smaller numbers than the 10 that we've asked of our campus community. That said, I know it's hard. It's hard for our students. It's hard even for all of us as faculty and staff not to gather together in the same way, but we do believe that those small gatherings are essential to keeping the community healthy during this time.
And that limitation, that's anywhere, right? That's not just the halls or dining hall or whatever. That's anywhere, right?
Yeah, on campus, off campus, anything that's not a classroom, imagine with its own protocols, or our masses, which we've been so happy to continue to offer for our residence hall communities, sometimes in different locations because of size, but that 10-person limit is applicable either on or off campus and for all members of our community.
How about the lodges? So the lectures that have gone up are same. What's the protocol there in terms of gathering?
Yeah, so the lodges, Greg, are brand new. We have only opened one, and it was such fun last weekend on campus. So if you asked me what one of the things I've been most worried about as I think about our spring semester is actually spring is not yet sprung here in South Bend. And so the cold that we're all experiencing, it's been really frigid, as you mentioned, really fun for my kids. But we've been worried about opportunities we would be able to make available for our students during this time. There was such success with the library lawn. Many campus units contributed to that success last semester. but we can't do it in February. And so the lodges are that solution. So think of them in a very real sense as an extension of Duncan Student Center, La Fortune Student Center, where the capacities have been reduced because of distancing requirements. And so the lodges are located on both South Quad, that's the one that's already open, and North Quad is actually going to open later this week for students, and they are for exactly that purpose, to hang out, to get together, to gather. I was there on Saturday night myself, the first time it opened, about 9 o'clock on Saturday night. So for our students, I was probably still there a little bit early, but they loved it. So what you see inside, and the university events team, along with our student activities team here at Notre Dame, designed them. And so such credit to the team that put it together. Students have some of the chairs, the Adirondack chairs we used in the fall, out on the lawns, but then we have new additions. Ping pong was enormously popular. We have some mini golf putt-putt that was also very popular with the students on Saturday night. And those are going to be open late into the evening, particularly on the weekends, to give students a great place that's warm and comfortable to connect. They're also glass, if you see the pictures, so you can kind of see them coming down the quad. So we hope it'll be inviting for the students in that respect.
Oh, I think they're inviting, all right. They look awesome. I didn't think that we could possibly top the look and kind of feel that that the library lawn had last semester, but I think these are going to be even more popular. As you know, Erin, I have a high school daughter, and in ordinary course before pandemic, she and her friends would come up here to study or go to Eddy Street Commons or whatever, or Starbucks, and they don't have that outlet anymore. She saw pictures of the South Quad Lodge, and she was begging me to go. And I said, we cannot.
That's awesome.
We cannot go there. It's not for us. It's for the students. It's for the students. So I think they're going to be inviting. I think it's going to be a recruiting tool for us, and that's my prediction. It's going to be a recruiting tool in the future. What about heating? So we've mentioned, both of us have talked about the kind of frigid weather here. How are you keeping those? What's the temperature going to be like? I know it's got to be a challenge given the real frosty weather that we've had the last 10 days or so.
Actually, this has been another great university partnership. So they're actually heated, Greg, from our steam tunnels. And actually, our colleagues in the utilities department have taken responsibility for setting them up. And actually, we've had great faculty involvement as well to make sure that the air is circulating appropriately. So from a health and safety standpoint, that they are as safe as our other indoor buildings on campus. And so when I was there, I would say it was about 65 in the tents when I was there on Saturday night. And that was after them having been open only for about 24 hours.
That's awesome. 65, it's balmy for this time of year, of course.
It is.
Around here. What about eating? Are students able to eat in the lodges?
No, this is a tough split that we're doing. So actually, students are invited to eat on campus in a separate set of tents that are not quite as fancy as the lodges, right? So the lodges are designed to stay, and dining, because we know it's a higher risk activity, is actually something we want to give students ample space to be able to do it safely. So we do have both dining halls open, though at reduced capacity. And we have 2 dining tents, again, on North and South Quad. And then we actually have additionally added other spaces across campus, either indoors. Actually, the Rasmus Club above the Duncan Student Center is a space that students can go and dine, but we wanted to separate that activity because it's by its very nature unmasked. And so we have those environments available for students, but they are separate.
How about, you mentioned your student recreation team. What about rec sports? So lodges seem to be a great alternative to gatherings and some social time. What about, what are we going to do about students this semester in terms of rec sports or other type of exercise or ways to burn off some energy even?
Yeah, a couple of things. One is all along, and I'm really grateful to the team involved in this. The fitness facilities, Greg, have been open. But I know there were a couple of questions that came in from the audience. We have seen a trend since our students returned a couple of weeks ago of shocker of shockers, more demand within the Smith Center in particular in Duncan, that is something we see every year, actually, is more demand in January. You can attribute it to New Year's resolutions probably, or you could attribute it as well simply to the weather. And so the team, seeing the increased demand from not only our students, but our faculty and staff community, has done everything possible. And we're even going to open up some more slots to make sure that we're utilizing every fitness machine that we can during this time. But we know that demand is up, and so we're really mindful of that. And we actually asked our community for help. We did notice a trend of some students signing up for multiple slots per day. So we are going to ask community members to use those facilities once a day. But we are working hard to make every spot available for students that we can. More broadly, Greg, I would say I have so much affection for our club and our inter-hall sports. But some of them have had to change as a result of the pandemic. So the contact sports, we've had to change or not offer some this year, but where we can, we've offered alternatives for students to get together in different ways over the course of this time. And again, from a programming standpoint, we're trying to embrace the outdoors. So the students don't know this yet, but if we do get a big snowstorm, we've got snow on the ground, but we haven't really had a storm. Our student activities staff has what I would call some pop-up events planned that will take advantage of the outdoor weather, maybe introduce students to a few new outdoor activities in terms of recreation that will make available to the campus population.
Only people who live in South Bend, Indiana would say, if we get a snowstorm. For those of you who haven't been here, we've had two different snowfalls of 6+ inches in the last like 20 days or so. So if we end up giving a heavy snow, we'll do something. I love it. I love it. So the challenges you've already talked about, the gathering 10 people, that's clearly a challenge for us, right? And we understand for the students, it's not the easiest policy to absorb and to live with, but it's something necessary to keep our campus community as safe as possible. We talked about the recreation opportunities. What other type of challenges do you think the winter months in particular are going to bring to us this semester?
Yeah, top of the list for me, Greg, is actually students' mental health and well-being, which we heard a lot about, rightly so, pre-pandemic. Actually, when you think about this generation of students and some of the mental health challenges that they even bring to us coming to Notre Dame, but certainly has been exacerbated by the pandemic. And so we've really reflected deeply, are regularly assessing our students to try to understand where some of those stressors are. One thing we learned, I would say, in the fall semester is how hard it was on students to lose a fall break. And here again, this semester, we're going to lose a spring break again. And there are very good physical health reasons for that. We want to really establish this Notre Dame bubble, stay and keep one another as safe as possible from transmission of the virus. But it does mean that there's different strategies and different things we need to do both academically and from a student life standpoint to offer students resources for mental health and well-being. So that's a worry that I would, again, have in a regular year, would have had pre-pandemic, but I think has certainly been exacerbated by the experience that we've had over the last 9 months.
Would you say that's also, we talked about kind of a peer review at the top of the show, the questions. I assume all campuses across the country are dealing with the same issues. Has that been your experience with your peers other places as well?
Absolutely. I would say both historically, Greg, there's been a tremendous increase in demand for counseling resources there. And then certainly we are all hearing from our students how difficult and challenging this time is now in the pandemic. So Notre Dame is on trend in many ways. I actually feel that we are quite lucky and have been so well supported in terms of the resources that we're able to make available to our students, particularly in this area. And there's always more to be done. I think we're going to have a long tail as well from the pandemic in terms of ongoing mental health needs for students. But I feel very well supported in terms of what we've been able to do and make possible for our students, even changes over the course of the last semester or so.
You mentioned that break. We're not having a traditional spring break this semester, and you've identified after last semester that was a significant issue. We're building in a little bit of a mini break, a couple of them, I think. Any thoughts on what the planning is there, or the process, or what you hope to accomplish by that?
Yeah, so this is where it's been a great partnership with my colleagues in the academy. And a couple of things, so let me brag on them for a second and then talk a little bit about how we're going to support and care for students. But faculty were terrific and heard from students how challenging that lack of a break was last semester. And Mari Lynn, our new provost, sent out a letter to the faculty when we announced these mini breaks, really to try to ask instructors to be very intentional about, for example, Greg, not having an exam or a major paper due the day after those mini breaks for our students. So we truly are trying to get rest and renewal for our students. And then that's where my team comes in. So the McDonald Center for Student Wellbeing actually had a variety of restoration activities for our students last fall, but we didn't have the benefit of those days off of class. So we think those are going to be even more successful and give students maybe an opportunity. Maybe it's a giveaway. Maybe it is yoga, meditation offerings for our students, or different types of things that we can offer that don't require students to do anything per se, but that we can give to them. And so the McDonald Center will be the coordinating programming body that works with a variety of other campus partners to make sure that those are days truly of rest for students.
It's certainly, I mean, I'm a small sample size, right? But I heard from so many students or parents of students that those days were just so sorely missed. So I'm thrilled that we're doing that. I think it's a brilliant addition to the planning of this semester. So as I mentioned earlier, we're just over a week into the semester. We are expecting that we're going to have some numbers, some positives that hit, far in excess of what we had hoped. What's gone well, and what do you think that we need to do a little bit differently after just a short sample size?
Oh, Greg, it's pretty early to tell on the what's gone well. I was really happy with the lodge launch last week, so I'm so glad that the students received that new space well. I do think the increased testing has been welcomed and embraced by students. So I don't think we've talked a ton about that, but our students are being tested every week, and the compliance, Greg, so far has simply been terrific. And I mean that from students as well as, you mentioned earlier, faculty and staff. So I think those are successes. I think what I would hope, especially as we're looking at these increased numbers, is that our students will continue to practice those habits, whether or not they are in public site with us on campus in a classroom setting or in a residence halls, but in all aspects of their lives to continue to adhere. The masks are our single best, still we know, defense in addition to the testing to keeping transmission low. But I think that vigilance is going to be hard. We're all tired. We've been at this for a very long time, and so I think ongoing, anything we can do to emphasize as a campus community that we're in this together. We understand it's not easy. But we do think it's worth it to be here on campus, to have classes in person, for our students to live among one another and to engage one another there. So that, I would say, is on my worry list, is that underlying fatigue of how long this journey has been. And we know that it's still going to be with us for several months to come.
Knowing that it's going to be with us for several months to come, and trying to take some lessons learned from last semester. We recently published the Campus Compact, and we've distributed it to everyone, and people have had a chance to read it, absorb it now. Could you talk a little bit about it? I'm sure that there's a lot of people that are watching today that may not know about the Campus Compact and kind of what the decision-making process was behind putting that in place.
Yeah. So what we did, Greg, which any good organization would do, is when we completed the semester, Father John really asked the university's leaders to reflect back exactly on the question you just asked. What went well, and what do we need to improve to have an even more successful spring semester? And there was a very long list of all of the things that with good due diligence we went and looked at. But if there was a single piece, I think that worried all of us, it's the case counts. We felt great about classroom health and safety protocols, but we did have a significant number of cases on campus last semester. And so we thought a different strategy might be needed. And there was a small group of university leaders. I was one of several that worked on, again, going and benchmarking, as you mentioned earlier. Notre Dame opened earlier than many, if not all, of our typical peers. And so we went back to look and see if there was anything learned. And the compact itself was actually one tool, one tactic among many that we saw that was a difference at some other institutions. So what is it? I would say it's a couple of things, Greg. It is first and foremost for our students, it's trying to put everything we're asking of them, which we know is a great deal, in one spot. So we were learning as we went, as we should have been over the course of the fall semester. But the compact itself is a commitment by our students, by the members of our community, to say, these are the things that the university is asking of me, and I'm going to agree to by coming back to campus for this spring semester. So we tried to put it from a spirit of transparency into one place. The second piece of the compact, Greg, that we knew would have some mixed results, and I would say that's really what we've seen, is we also thought we had to attend to any violations of health and safety protocols on campus as swiftly as we could. And the reason for that is severalfold. One, we want to do anything we can to prevent transmission. But secondly, we're in a public health emergency, right? And so the university, I think, needs to respond in a way that not only offers fairness to our students who might be have somebody have reported something from a violation standpoint about them, but also protecting that overall welfare of the community if there has been a violation. And so the second piece of the compact is really trying again to be very transparent with students about what might occur and what they can expect if a violation is reported.
So I'm speaking of that aspect of the compact, and I know it covers several different things. One of the aspects approaches or discusses, some severe repercussions to violations of the compact, and that would be dismissal or separation. And I'm going to read from the kind of a summary. I think that with respect to the dismissal or separation, both of those may be penalties for actions such as hosting or participating in gatherings in excess of university stipulated limits, violations of quarantine or isolation protocols, missing a required test while on COVID probation, and serious, repeated, or flagrant violations of the compact commitments. All very serious outcomes. And what are your thoughts, and what is the team putting in place to ensure there's a fair process if one of those things is alleged of one of our students in terms of determining the outcome?
Thanks, Greg. As you might imagine, this is one of the most challenging parts of certainly my role, but the team that is with me. You have a bunch of folks, particularly across the university as well as in this division, who are in this work because we care about, we love students, and actually one of our favorite things is to see how they grow over the years, right? And so we also know at this age that the mistakes can be made, and we want students to have the opportunity to learn and to grow. But we're in a public health emergency. And so here's the balance we've struck. If you look at testing, for example, which is such a critical piece of the protection of our campus community, a student gets a variety of different notices about when they need to show up for testing. We do that, Greg, not only by email, but by text to make sure that there is no missing for a student to know when they need to be here. And the student also gets multiple chances to make sure that if they've missed one test, you don't have that severe outcome, right? So imagine, for example, that students have notice about what we're asking of them, and we're trying to communicate that really clearly. And if they do make a mistake, if they do miss a test, they get a notice first, right? And that's very clearly articulated in the compact, so students know what to expect in the addendum that we've put together. The hosting of parties and violation of quarantine and isolation, Greg, again, I would say it has those same principles, right? So there's a lot of communication about the expectations we're asking and the commitment from our campus community. Even when a student enters into, for example, quarantine and isolation, they're given a very formal set of expectations so the students know what the rules of the road are. And that's so important to me from a fairness standpoint that they have that notice. And then students have an opportunity to respond. There's been mixed, some students would like a longer period to respond, certainly if a violation has been put in place, but absolutely we think it's important for students to have the opportunity to respond and before any type of severe outcome is put in place. There's nobody on this campus who wants to have a result where a student's sent home and dismissed. On the other hand, we have an overwhelming obligation to keep our campus community safe. So those principles of make sure students know what we're asking of them very transparently, give them notice, and give them an opportunity to respond are really how we have built the process around what we know is a high set of expectations. It's my belief, and I've certainly seen this for the testing so far, that our students are going to rise to the challenge, Greg, right? So we've seen great compliance on the testing so far, and we're really grateful. We need to keep it up. And we'll do our part of the bargain, and I'm really hoping and anticipating that our students will too.
And in terms of expectations, I don't, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's a lot of drastic differences in terms of expectations. This compact is, as you use the term well, I think it's about transparency and putting in one place what their expectations are. Is that right? There's not a lot different.
It is, yeah. So Greg, I would say the only big changes that we would have asked of students last fall versus this spring is actually around that weekly testing. And as I said, that's been embraced by our students who themselves, and the university wanted this as well as we were building up capacity, more asymptomatic testing. And so we have worked so hard to make that possible. And then the other thing we do know is a challenge is we've asked students really to stay in the South Bend area and been more explicit about that, I think, than we were in the fall, though again, I would say the spirit of it was very similar to try to establish to the extent we can this bubble of our campus community.
How have the students, what's been the response so far to the compact?
Mixed. And I think fairly and anticipatingly so. So some aspects have been embraced, as I said, from the testing standpoint. And then some students have expressed concern about, well, how long do I get to respond if somebody has filed a report about me or my behavior? And one thing I think that's really important, and it's been something that I've really valued in working with students, especially over these last 9 years, Greg, is we have to talk about it. And so our student government leaders actually hearing that there was some concern in the student community invited me to come to the Student Senate last week. I was really delighted to do it. And I spent more than, I think, an hour with them just going through fielding questions about why did you do this? Why did you put this campus compact in place? What values are you balancing one way or the other? And so that's something I hope we can continue to model as a campus community, even if there are aspects or areas of what we've put in place that students don't agree with. I want to provide rationale and I want to be available to them to answer questions.
Do you bring up something I was going to ask you later on, but I'll ask it now.
Yeah.
From many of your peers in leadership at the university, a lot of them would say that they've had even more engagement and communication with students as a result of the pandemic. Now, most of it is just trying to figure things out or constantly trying to get feedback or trying to figure out, what's the best way to accomplish A, B, or C. How have you felt the communication's been with students during the pandemic? Is it increased? Is it about the same? Is it worse off? Now, I know it's not as face-to-face as you probably would like, but any learnings there?
I do miss the face-to-face, although that's been fun actually for those student groups that do meet in person. I've had a chance to go and engage with students in that way. But I have certainly, Greg, without exception, written more letters to students probably in the first 2 months of the pandemic combined than I had in the prior 9 years. And I actually think that there's some good things to learn about that. So we've had, for example, I've long had for the last 9 years, some advisory committees of students that I've worked with. We've also, since June, had a reopening committee that has combined undergraduate students as well as graduate and professional students. And so Hugh Page from the Provost's office on the undergraduate side and Laura Carlson as Dean of the Graduate School have joined me. That's been a terrific group where we can sort of bounce back and forth on not only students very transparently, we run an open Google sheet and we say, ask us any question you want. What are you hearing from your constituencies? And then we do the same. We say, we're thinking about making this change. What's your input? What's your feedback? And so I actually hope that some of these mechanisms and some of these university leaders who've engaged with students more deliberately and more intensely during this time period, that's something we carry with us after the pandemic as well. I don't know if I need to send them as many letters, but I certainly do hope the ongoing conversation is something that we keep.
Handwritten or typed letters?
Emailed.
Emails. All right. So you're not going back to your days of law school. So it's close.
No.
Staying on topic of what's worked well and what you hope to see become maybe a norm around here. What are some other things that have stuck out to you that have worked well, or opportunities that we can, as a university environment, get better at post pandemic?
Yeah, I'll highlight a couple that are on my mind, though. Actually, it was one of the things that I sat down with my leadership team in the division and did in January as part of our retreat. I said, what do we want to keep after all of this is over? And it was actually really good, I think, for our own morale, knowing how challenging some of this time has been, to think that there were some real accomplishments. So let me give you a couple that came up on our list. One is, I've always loved Welcome Weekend in August. It is such a wonderful time of possibility. I always love commencement, but for us, that has a bittersweet nature because we're saying goodbye to students, even as we're so proud of their accomplishments. So Welcome Week is one of my favorites. One thing we did this year that I think we should absolutely keep is engage virtually with parents and students in advance. Right? So there was content delivered that I think we never would have thought about doing in that way and would have intuitively done in person, that I think we can do really effectively with parents and students, or those who aren't able to travel with their student to campus to drop them off, that should stay with us long after that time. This one, I would say, the next one is my team's still debating a little bit. We did online room picks for the first time last April. And from an efficiency standpoint and a clarity standpoint, I think it had great possibility. There's also a really lovely hall tradition to sort of coming downstairs, seeing the floor plan and talking and engaging in that process. So I think that's one, for example, that we need to think a little bit more about from that perspective. And then the third, and I could give you the longer list, but is we've also shifted in terms of some of our health and well-being resources. As I had mentioned, I'm so proud of the support we've been able to offer. One new thing we launched mid-semester is something called Fighting Irish Care. And so it offers telehealth services and teletherapy services to our students. It's really an extension of what we're able to offer in person. And I'll be really interested to see, as students get to know this new service, it offers us a more diverse set of providers and can, in some cases, offer them quicker access to care, how that persists beyond the pandemic. So we'll see, based on what the students will vote with their feet one way or the other, how much they like it, but we're watching that trend really closely as well.
So far, has it been utilized, the telehealth piece?
It has been, Greg. And one reason we put it in place is probably when I was here in April last year, one of the big worries I had is that because of licensure constraints, we couldn't have our own counselors, who are wonderful here at the University Counseling Center, serve students back at home because of licensure constraints, right? And so actually this service allows us to make care available. And so we know that at least 10% of the student population, remember this is brand new, actually initiated care over the long winter break. And winter break itself, I'm going to be fascinated to see what the university does with that. There were so many courses offered that I think were well received by students. You mentioned at the beginning, and know well, that I work with the Career Center. We had wonderful engagement with alumni, parents, others who support and are friends of the university, making short-term employment opportunities possible for our students, or unpaid internships over this long break. And holy cow, I think it was, first of all, wonderful for the students. We got great feedback, but I actually think as well, wonderful for ongoing cultivation of relationships with employers, to see the talent of Notre Dame students and be connected to the university in new ways. So I think that's one that we'll really be considering. Maybe it's not a 10-week break every year, but boy, I bet there's lessons learned about these projects that students worked on that we can do creatively during other break times, even beyond traditional internships in the summer.
I think it's an amazing opportunity, right? And you stole my thunder. I was going to give a shout out to my friend Ryan Willerton, an amazing job that he and his whole team did, that as director of the Center for Career Development, and everyone over at the Murillo Center has really rallied and done an amazing job, I think, with the students. And we had the honor of participating with them and trying to help them locate people. And our alumni parents and friends rallied and really responded well. And I've only received positive feedback from the students so far, about those experiences. So like you, I wonder if that's something that we can continue into the future. I'll put you on the spot a little bit about on the career side. Um, what's Ryan's thought process now in terms of the summer? Any insight there of what's it look like for internships or opportunities for our students?
Yeah, you're not putting me on the spot as well at all. This is a repeat of my one-on-ones with Ryan Willerton. So here's what's happening is actually next week, Greg, we've got our traditional winter career fair. Of course, that's going to be virtual, but I am, again, so proud and grateful to be part of the Notre Dame family because we have continued to see really outstanding employer engagement with our students. So the market for Notre Dame talent, I think, remains very strong. And what Ryan is concurrently doing is actually assessing our students. So he's got what they would call check-ins. Actually, this is him really dangerous with Tableau and Qualtrics surveys going out, but really trying to figure out not only for summer, but actually for our graduating students, whether they are undergraduates or graduates, what their plans are, what they need. And they're going to follow up with each and every student who's still seeking, whether that's permanent or summer. I would say in terms of, Greg, whether or not we'll see virtual versus in person, that's still a little bit TBD. But what I can tell you is the team is taking a very individualized approach, both with employers and especially with students, to make sure that we are reaching out and making sure that they know the resources that are available there.
Well, like Ryan, and you have had so many on your team that have done just an amazing job. And as I mentioned, at the outset, that your division has been impacted. There's nobody's been impacted more, that's for sure. And Ryan and his team have done a great job, just like your other divisions and Father Pete and campus ministry. And we've talked a lot about the health and wellness team as well. And they've done an incredible job. Before we close, Erin, are there any other thoughts that you want to share or let folks know out there and what you hope for in the weeks and days to come, especially these next, feels like the pinch point is the next 6 weeks here on campus until the weather breaks a little bit. And what's on your mind to close?
I would say, Greg, from my standpoint is I hope throughout the course of this conversation is gratitude to our students, and especially if there are parents watching. I know I'm really grateful for the alums, but to have our students back with us and learning in person and connecting with one another in person is something that I don't take for granted, and something I firmly and deeply believe is the best that we can offer them of Notre Dame. But we know that we're asking a great deal of our students, and that I think as a parent, I'm sure you do the same, right? It's a lot during these times, and folks are worried about the health and safety of their children, and certainly for all of us worried about the health and safety of our campus community. So I am so grateful to be on campus, to have our students with us, and we're going to do everything possible to make opportunities possible for them in that safest way we can. We just need the students to keep showing up for testing and also to really keep practicing those health and safety protocols. That's going to give us our best chance, not only for success in making it through the semester, but for us to offer them as many opportunities as we want to.
Well, thank you, Erin. Thanks for your leadership. Thank you for joining us again today and for enduring me as Lou's understudy today. We are grateful for all the countless hours you have put in, you and your team, and your willingness to adapt to circumstances and make changes when appropriate. And I think that you have a lot of talent on your team, obviously, and you have a tremendous amount of talent yourself. But what always impresses me is the level of care that you have. And, I think that you can tell great leaders around here by the level of care that they have. And I know that you deeply and passionately care about the safety, the well-being, and the success of our students. So we thank you for all your service on behalf of everyone here at Notre Dame. Just like we did in April, when we had Erin on, we followed Erin with Shannon Cullinan. We're going to do the same thing this time. So we're grateful to have Erin today, and we're grateful that Shannon Cullinan, our Executive Vice President, will join us next week on Ash Wednesday for the next live chat. I believe Lou will be resuming his duties next week, but if not, I don't know if I did a good enough job to be re-upped, so maybe it'll be someone else. No, we do expect Lou to be back. So I invite you all to join us next week for Shannon. As we do each week, Erin, if you'll join me in prayer to our patroness with the Hail Mary to close. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Today, we have a little bit of a teaser for you before we close. Just in time for Valentine's Day, we have a new series that we're going to launch, and it's called the Fighting Irish Foodies, and we're going to launch it tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're going to launch it at 2:30 p.m. It's, we invite anyone to join, pass it along for any of you that have any interest. Notre Dame's executive pastry chef, Cy Vespi, fresh off her recent win on the Food Network's Halloween Baking Championship, will join us, and she'll teach us how to make the world famous Notre Dame shortbread cookies. So just in time for Valentine's Day, you'll learn how to cook for your significant others, friends, anyone else. You can watch it live at go.nd.edu/foodies. Here's a short video to tease for tomorrow. God bless, go Irish.